Hi everyone, welcome to episode 106 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Simple Minds guitarist, the one and only Charlie Burchill. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Ian Brody from the Lightning Seeds about their new album, See You in the Stars.
I wasn't very confident about doing a record. I was in two minds. He kept saying to me, "You finished any songs?" And then he was like, "Look, I'm in the studio producing things all the time. Just come up for a couple of days and get one finished. And I'll record it, And I did that. And that was the first one I recorded for the album. And when I came home, I was like listening to it. I was like, this is Lightning Seeds, I'm able to write that way again. And it's funny because that song in a strange way, when I wrote the first verse, it was all about when I looked at it and I was going to write the chorus. And I thought, this is about, every month you're a slightly less effective version than you were the month before, the year before, and I'm kind of talking about how, the charm of youth and it's hard for me to believe, you've got to believe and then, and then I sort of came to the chorus and I thought, I thought, is it silly for me to still dream? I'm getting on a bit. I still have these hopes and dreams. And then I thought, this is such a first world problem. And you're a spoiled, it's great to just be alive. It's great to be alive. And I thought, well, that's the chorus, whisper in my ear, tell me again, it's great to be alive, And then the second verse is kind of like, forget the first verse. It's great. But in many ways, that was, it was kind of how I felt. So it was kind of like where I was, really, and it enabled me to move past that and write the rest of the album.
So check it out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe for free and share it with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at xsnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
Alex Hoggard has been listening to the new album from The Cult, Under the Midnight Sun. Across its 8 tracks, Alex says it's a solid rock album which will leave fans wanting more. 7 out of 10, with the title track one of the highlights. And Laurie Gava gives the new Broken Bells album Into the Blue a 9 out of 10 score. It's the product of a collaboration between the Shins' James Mercer and Brian Burton, better known as Danger Mouse. Laurie says the pair explore fresh musical directions while retaining their individual sounds. There's new music on the site from The Answer, who return after 7 years with Blood Brother, the first single off upcoming album Sundowners. They'll also play a run of UK and European dates next year. Liam Gallagher's new video, Too Good for Giving Up, is streaming now, and there's news of the Kaiser Chiefs UK tour with the Fratellis and the Sherlocks supporting. All the details are at xsnoize.com.
Simple Minds are about to release their 18th studio album, The Fantastic Direction of the Heart. In this interview, Charlie Burchill talks about writing and recording the album, his long-lasting friendship with Jim Kerr, his career highlights, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Charlie Burchill from Simple Minds. So hi Charlie, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Hi there, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
It's great to have you, Charlie. So Simple Minds have just finished your rescheduled and extensive 40 Years of Hits tour. I seen you play in Belfast, which was fantastic. How was the tour for you?
It was a fantastic tour. I mean, it really was. I'd be saying that every tour, but it was particularly good, Mark. And it was very tiring, actually, because we did about 80 shows in about 4.5 months. And we did 8 shows in 9 days at one stretch. So it was pretty tough. And even by the road crew, even they were saying they can't remember a tour that was like so intense like that. But it was really fantastic. We had a great time everywhere we went. And it was just so great to play again. And you could feel that the audiences were just so happy to be, at live events again.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, you played Belfast, and it was fantastic to hear you play Belfast Child.
Finally.
Yeah.
We managed to get Jim to do it.
Yeah, because I seen you on the acoustic tour in the waterfront in Belfast, and you just didn't play it, and I went, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that for a while Jim felt that, he felt the same with another song we have, Mandela Day. He felt that, that it had been said and that times had moved on, but then he said he felt that, a song like Belfast Child and indeed Mandela Day, they're kind of relevant in their own way in these times. And my perspective on it is that it's just a great tune, Belfast Child, and the sentiment is great, what it says. And, you have to play it in Belfast. You have to,
If it was called Glasgow Child, you'd be playing it every time in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that right?
That's right. But it was a great moment in the Belfast show, obviously, but, it was really a special moment,
Yeah, it was great. It was great. So Simple Minds will soon release your 18th studio album, Direction of the Heart. I love it. I have it on constant rotation. Jim describes the album as an electro rock record. When you begin writing a new album, do you always have an idea what kind of songs you want to write about and how you want the album to sound?
No, Mark, no. To be honest, no. It's the process is usually, it's not, there's never really like an obvious beginning point. There's a kind of constant flow of, I'm always writing, So there'll be stuff that's there maybe that we pick up on that was originated in 10 years ago. And in the process, there'll be certain things that you do, as you work on quite a lot of different ideas, something emerges. There's a particular type of, I wouldn't say it's like an obvious sound thing, but you start to realise that there's something emerging here. Jim's very good at that. Jim usually picks up in that, and he's very good at articulating what it is. And then it kind of gives you a little bit of a guideline as to where we're going with the bigger project. But to be honest, at the beginning, it's really a blank page. Just there's stuff always there, but we never try to be too formulaic. And it just depends. I mean, what happened with this album was we had quite a lot of songs, and at the end of it, Jim kind of felt that it was a very energetic album. So there was a few tracks that arguably I felt should have been on the album. They were really strong ideas. But for the type of record that we were making, we decided that we would hold them back and just go with the more focused, energetic stuff.
Most of the album's tracks were written in Sicily, and the album was recorded in Hamburg because you couldn't make it to the UK because of COVID restrictions. Was that frustrating because you couldn't be with the whole band?
No, because to be honest, it's usually just Jim and I working, Mark, the way we make records now. For the longest time, actually, it's been Jim and I working on it, and then we go to the studio with producers, and then if we need something, like we need a bit of drums, a bass, or anything. So, but like I said, we didn't write the album in Sicily, really. We wrote some stuff, but we kind of wrote it over a few different places like Glasgow, London, and Sicily, Hamburg. But it was a bit tricky, that COVID thing. If you did want to do anything with the band, it would have been a bit tricky. But as it turned out, to be honest, most of the stuff is recorded before we get to the studio. That's just the way making modern music is, with all the gear, it's kind of it's all in the box and it's all there. Occasionally we like to go and try and get a live element into it and get everybody together and kick it around. But on this one, we didn't do that too much. A couple of tracks we did, but not much.
Your previous two albums, Big Music and Walk Between Worlds, were highly acclaimed and successful. The latter was your highest charting album in 23 years. Because of the success of those albums, do you feel pressure going into recording albums such as Direction of the Heart?
No, not really, because I think at the moment, because of the nature of the album, nobody really knows, I mean, you know, I speak to a lot of people and they don't even know if it's worthwhile making an album these days, the way that music is listened to. But Jim and I are a bit traditional in that sense. We're a bit old school. We think the album still is very much as a living thing that should be, and we're always going to make records. So it was kind of, there's a lot of it is out of your control. You kind of, if you could go from A to B and you knew exactly what you were doing, life would be really easy, but it's never like that. So we kind of just start and we just go with our instinct. So it doesn't leave much room for us to feel pressurized, really,
I still love the album myself, but when you're writing albums, do you still think about when you're writing the songs like a proper running order and proper like side A, side B?
Yeah, we do. It's more like, again, like songs start to present themselves where they should be. You know which one is the opener. You know what's going to close. And you kind of know where, you might need to pull it back a little bit, and then it takes on a kind of its own dynamic, really. And I think that, in a sense, in our heads, it's always thinking about vinyl, but it's more like a kind of a bit of a journey, and you just sort of, you're just imagining that people are going to listen to it in its entirety, you hope. And if they do, you try and imagine what that journey would be like and how to keep it interesting.
Well, let's talk about some of the songs. Act of Love was released earlier this year to mark the anniversary of the band's very first performance at Glasgow's Satellite City on January the 17th, 1978. Before we get into the song, what can you remember about that night?
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember we were playing with Steel Pulse, the band. We were supporting them in a place that we used to go and see shows in Glasgow. So that in itself felt like a moment, because we were on this stage that normally we were at the other side watching bands. And I remember being very nervous and remember that couldn't quite believe that this was happening. The rest of it, I don't really have much recollection. Jim, on the other hand, Jim was telling me about it, and I remembered certain things through him, describing it.
Around that time, Simple Minds were a punk band, but decided to become an electronic band when you heard the 12-inch version of I Feel Love by Donna Summer, which was produced by Giorgio Moroder. I love the fact that Keith Forsey played drums on that track.
Yeah.
And then Simple Minds later on went to work with Keith for Don't You Forget About Me.
Yeah, he's a remarkable guy, Keith, because he was also in a krautrock band way back in the 70s, Amandul. And he was a drummer, and a fantastic guy. I mean, a really brilliant guy. Funny, just a strange coincidence that, even the way that we ended up working with Keith was bizarre. I mean, it was just really a shot in the dark, and we loved him, and we said, we need to work with him again. So it was great, and it was also great to hear about how they made all those records. Brilliant,
Act of Love is a reimagining of one of the first songs you wrote with Jim. It features a great guitar riff from yourself. Was it always niggling in your mind that you wanted to return to it to finish it off?
Well, Jim always wanted to return to it. I mean, Jim, for years and years, Jim kept saying to me, that riff, we have to use it. And I kept thinking, yeah, it's an okay riff. It's not bad. It's kind of like one of those ones that you learn when you're really young. Kind of quite an obvious thing to me, actually. But Jim kept returning to it, kept on pushing it. And finally, I remember one time I was working in Thailand, I think it was. I had a little studio set up there. And I had this electronic bass thing, and I put the riff over it, and I thought, that's dynamite the way this works together. And then we kind of like reinvented the whole song, really.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, Human Traffic features Russell from Sparks. I love the guitar melody on the track. It's fantastic. How did Russell get involved?
I love that guitar melody as well. I mean, it's really unusual, I think, and it's quite weird. In fact, it was so odd that I used to say to Jim, I can't find a reference for this song. I don't know what it is. I don't know what style it is. I don't know what this thing is. And then when we kind of one day we realised that the closest we could get to it would be Sparks. It sounded like something Sparks would do. And just as we were thinking about that, Jim said, Russell came to see us play in LA. And he was a lovely guy. We met him afterwards. And Jim said to me, he would be great singing on this. And I said, oh, absolutely. I mean, of course, And we thought, well, we'll give it a shot. Probably nothing will happen. And he did an amazing job. And he really put a lot of effort into it. It wasn't like he just did some little bit or some little, chorus doubling Jim. I mean, he actually did like a lot of stuff on it, and it was just great. And we were so delighted, actually. And I think it really, really works brilliantly, the mix.
Yeah, it's fantastic. My favourite track on the album is Solstice Kiss. I love the Celtic intro. I know it's a song, another Simple Minds song that's been around for a while, and it was co-written with Jed. What can you tell me about the genesis of that song? Because I know it has been around maybe a few albums ago.
Yeah, Jed brought that song. We were working on, I think it was Black and White, the album. And Jed had that song. We were in the studio working, so we played it, we recorded it. And at the end up, we just felt that it didn't really do it. And we left it really, Then we got approached by, I don't know if this is supposed to be out there, but we got approached by a company, a Scottish drinks company, who they wanted us to do a track for a project we're working on. And the very Celtic nature of that song, Jim thought that we should rework it. So we reworked it, angling it more on the Celtic element and featuring that. And and then it just found its time, like a lot of songs do. Sometimes they can be 20 years old, they can be 1 year old, but that one was certainly there a few albums ago.
And Planet Zero features another fantastic guitar melody from yourself.
And that guitar melody is, strangely enough, because it sounds like a rock track, right? It's like a real, to me, the guitar melody was always a bit like a high life, African high life melody, which is really weird. I said that to Jim, and Jim couldn't get it at all. And I suppose nobody would, but if I was to play that melody on a very clean guitar sound, I think, it would have this kind of a African style, difficult to describe it, but it's definitely something that, but then in the rock context, of course, it takes on a whole different kind of, it's spiky and it's quite, I think it's a bit like a 70s thing or something.
Well, the album finishes with The Walls Come Down, which is a cover of a song by The Call, who you previously recorded one of their songs with Let the Day Begin for Big Music. What draws you to The Call? Why do you like to cover their tracks?
Oh, just because they're great songs, and he was a great friend of ours, Michael, who died unfortunately, but he was, we toured together with the band, and Michael he was a bit older than us, and we always felt he was a brilliant writer, loved his lyrics. He was an amazing bass player. He was just an all-round amazing man. And, we wanted to keep his music alive, and we just found ourselves doing these songs because we loved them. And especially The Walls, because it's very, lyrically, the subject matter is very of the moment, actually, with all this political stuff going on, and all this division and wars. And it's a song that the message can work in any period. And we wanted to give it a kind of a bit more of an electronic angle on it, and just keep it alive, really, just put it out there.
Yeah, it's a great way to end the album. What song on the album did you enjoy recording the most? What song means the most to you? I
think Human Traffic, funny enough. I think Human Traffic was something that, for me, it was a track that I'd worked on, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And and it came really easy, and it was caricature, I would say. And then a lot of the other tracks were like going through the grind, working on them and rearranging them and trying to figure out what they are. What's this one? Who's the character in this song? But with Human Traffic, none of that happened. It was just a very straightforward, playful, fun song. And I thought Jim did a brilliant job with the lyrics on it. Brilliant. And it's very unusual for Jim, a kind of song like that where, mentioning the days of the week and stuff like that. It's not normally Jim's thing, but I thought he did a great job with that. And, that's my favourite thing.
Most Simple Minds albums have 9 songs. Do you think that's enough for the perfect album? Is less more?
Yeah, exactly, Mark. Yep. I mean, we've always felt that, to be honest with you, We just feel that if you do more, you're really pushing it. People's attention span, I think, 8 or 9 songs, and then they've had it. I also think that it's not like you have to give value for money by doing 17 songs. That's counterproductive, we feel, And in a way, if you do 8 or 9, you can really cherry pick what you think is good enough to go out there. We could have made an album with like 14 songs. In fact, at one point, we were thinking about doing a double album with that much material. But we decided that, no, let's keep it a focused album. That's our philosophy. 8 or 9's, enough.
Well, you've mentioned you've lots of songs left over, so Simple Minds are always looking forward. So are you already thinking about the next album?
Yeah, we're always thinking about a new thing, a new project. But it never runs to script. It's always a bit like start somewhere and see what happens. But the way it works is that sometimes, you think when you have leftovers from an album, you think that's going to be the basis of your next album. And quite often it doesn't work like that, that you don't go near those songs for maybe years. But there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's just something that you have to wait and see how you feel at the time and how it shapes up itself. So there's a couple that I'd like to work on. I think are good enough to go on another album if they start. And there's a few that I think will probably sit in the cupboard until they find a time.
Another 40 years later.
Indeed.
We mentioned Direction of the Heart features some great guitar playing from yourself. You've written many great guitar parts and riffs over the years. What's your favourite guitar riff from any Simple Minds song?
Oh, God,
What one do you enjoy playing most live on a live show?
Live, I suppose something like Someone Somewhere in Summertime. It has a sort of special feeling for me because when we wrote it, it was on an album called New Gold Dream, and the way it came around was quite interesting because Mick and I, the keyboard player, had been jamming all night, till like 5 a.m. And Jim was recording it on a big ghetto blaster, and he said to me, "Hey, Charlie, listen to this." And there was a moment where there was a kind of convergence of the keyboard chords and the guitar line. And he said, "That's dynamite." And that's we based the song around that. And I'd say that one, maybe, if I had to pick one.
And Bono of U2 picked Someone Somewhere in Summertime as one of his chosen records on Desert Island Discs.
Did he?
Recently, yeah.
I didn't know that. I knew he had written a very kind thing about New Gold Dream, the song. I didn't know that about Someone Somewhere.
Yeah, it's one of his top
that's amazing.
Top 10 songs.
That's amazing. Really?
Yeah.
Brilliant. But he's some man. He's great. What a lovely, generous guy.
Well, Simple Minds has written many great songs, but is there one song that you've written that you think's underrated that maybe slipped under the radar?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Yeah, what would that be indeed? Well, actually, to be honest, Mark, I mean, I think the ones that do slip under the radar, there's probably a good reason for them, to be honest. I mean, like with a song called Hypnotize, which was a minor hit. I always thought it was a great track. People would love it. It's a lot of people's favorite Simple Minds song. But the thing is, when I listened to it, Jim and I I realised why it wasn't a big hit or why it wasn't an obvious one. It's something that if we had done it again now, we would have really focused in on the strong parts. But that's just the process. Sometimes you get them, and other times you just nearly get them.
Well, that's interesting, because I've always loved that song. And it's off the album Good News from the Next World, which,
that's right.
It's probably your heaviest sounding guitar album. It's an unusual album in the Simple Minds catalogue.
That's right.
Your guitar's all over it, especially in the song She's a River, Hypnotized, as you mentioned, Criminal World. Did you enjoy rocking out more with a heavier sound on that record?
Yeah, we did, because we were working with Keith Forsey at the time, and Keith was pushing in a certain direction. It was great, actually, because Keith really got me to use amps in the studio again. Sounds crazy, but, for a long time, people were just using whatever. But Keith was like, we pulled out all these old matchless amps that I've got and set them up. So I was having a lot of fun just playing through the amps, and I guess that kind of, found its way into the album sound. It's rocky, but it's kind of still got quite a lot of, eccentricity in it. But it's that we were working in America as well, so obviously all these things have some kind of subliminal influence,
No, it's an absolutely great album. I love it.
Brilliant, Mark. That's nice. It's an album that I think, as the years have went on, more and more people keep bringing that album up and saying, no, that's a brilliant album. But at the time, it did really well, but, at the time, it was kind of like, felt a bit like it was in between something, we didn't know what, exactly what kind of record it was. Later on, we found out it was a rock album,
Yeah. It deserves a reissue. My mate was complaining he had to spend 80 quid on it for the vinyl.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
The funny thing about that album, which is really, really weird, is that we went to India to do the album cover. And we were there for about 10 days. We had a big entourage, cost a fortune. And the only thing that we used for the album cover was was a door, a photograph of a door. And it was kind of a bit bonkers, because it had nothing to do with the record, really. But no, it's an interesting album anyways.
Direction of the Heart aside, if you were to recommend one of your albums to someone who had never heard Simple Minds before, what album would you tell them to start with?
Probably New Gold Dream, I would imagine, A really strange thing is that the first 5 albums that we did with the hardcore fans, the hardcore fans keep going on about it. Nobody bought them, But everybody moans about how they were the best albums. But then, funny enough, there's so many people who, for them, Simple Minds started the street fighting years, which was done in '89. And in fact, recently when we played, for example, in Spain and Portugal there, when we do songs from that period, 89, 90, from street fighting years or real life, the reaction you get is incredible. It's as if you're playing Don't You Forget About Me. Mm-hmm. And it's a real strange one. And then we realised that those countries, they never really got music in the 80s like we did in Northern Europe. In fact, I met these young Chinese guys one time, and they didn't know I was in Simple Minds, but they were talking about how they loved bands from Glasgow, and they were talking about Simple Minds. And I said for a laugh, well, what's your favourite Simple Minds album? And they said Street Fighting Years, which blew me away. And the reason, of course, is because China didn't really, it was about 89, 90 when China started, listening to the West a bit, or being able to, for young people, being able to maybe, culturally, get involved with stuff from the West. So it's a really difficult one, but I would say New Gold Dream probably is a good introduction. It's a certain side of the band, and it seems to be a lot of people's favourite Simple Minds album.
Yeah, it's again another fantastic album, Hunter and Hunted. Probably my favourite track on that there.
Great.
But you're saying, I think what happened with Simple Minds was when you were playing the stadiums and stuff, and then people looked back and then just discovered your earlier stuff, Life in a Day, Reel to Rail, Sons of Fascination. And certainly, those albums have certainly influenced bands now, like the Horrors, for example.
Yeah. I said, I know. I mean, a lot of people did, do say to us, that, they rediscovered those albums, or not rediscovered, but discovered them. I mean, interestingly enough, Sons of Fascination, I think, is one of my favourite albums that we've done. I think it was a really innovative album with a lot of mad stuff on it, but not many. I wouldn't say there was that many great songs, but I think it was a really, really interesting, double album. That it's just a feelings called, and I think in there's a lot of sort of very innovative stuff going on in those records.
So Simple Minds are one of the most successful bands ever to come out of the UK. You've sold millions of records worldwide, and have number one singles on both sides of the Atlantic and number one albums the world over. Looking back, Charlie, what have been your highlights so far?
Yeah, okay, Mark. Well, I would say, I think it's when, for example, when we first went on Top of the Pops, that was a moment, felt like we've made it, we hadn't, you feel like that when you're on a show like that. Then you have various milestones like Live Aid, obviously, was amazing to play. Working with different people, Peter Gabriel, touring with Peter Gabriel and having Peter, sing with his little Stephen, doing the Mandela shows. Lou Reed's on one of our albums, singing backing vocals with David Bowie on an Iggy Pop album. Wow. These are all things that when you look back, you think, wow, did that really happen? And playing Phoenix Park with U2, that was fantastic. Doing shows in Belgium with, U2, us, Peter Gabriel, Eurythmics, Van Morrison. Things like that, really special moments when you look back over the years. But I think, in general, it's just really, one of the things that we appreciate now is that we've made a life out of this music thing, and it's what we are. And when you come to grips with that, finally, there's a certain amount of like real pleasure that you get for just thinking, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And when you're aware of that, it's something that, believe it or not, you're not aware of for a long time. You just continue on. And then at some point there's a realization, this is what we did with our lives. And that's a great feeling,
Well, during that time, Simple Minds have had many lineups in your long career, but you and Jim Kerr have stuck in there. What's the secret of your long lasting relationship?
Well, I think obviously we're such great friends, and I think we're very different from each other. We're completely different. Jim doesn't play anything. I don't write words. So there's also that thing where for us to write, it takes two, and it's been a great thing. Just first and foremost being friends, but just really thinking in the same wavelength about a lot of stuff. And I don't know. I suppose it's Jim's line, he probably told you the last time, Mark, was that it's a bit like being married, except I've now tried to take his house away from him. But it is a bit like being married when you spend that amount of time with somebody. And I'm going to see him for lunch now, It's one of those things that, even when we're not officially working, we tend to be together, and we tend to, we travel with it, it's just been one of those things that we've been really lucky. It's a great friendship.
Well, I read recently that Jim said back in our school days, Charlie's nickname was Charlie Bubble. To this day,
That's right.
To this day, I still call him Charlie the Bub. Alternatively, he refers to me as the Emperor. Can you elaborate where these nicknames came from?
He calls himself the Emperor.
No, you call him the Emperor, he says.
That's right. Well, actually, Mark, that'd be a difficult one to put on your show. That one. Could get him into a lot of trouble, actually. Okay, I'll give you a little hint of it. Right? It's something to do with being a bit naughty.
Okay.
In his day, playing the field a bit,
Right.
And I used to call him the Emperor of Nauticus.
We'll leave it there.
And I think that's about as far as I'll go with that one.
Just a few more questions, Charlie. I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack of our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Well, it comes straight into my head right away. Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie. And the reason for that is because my brother had it when we were younger, and I didn't know anything else about David Bowie. I didn't know anything. That was the first record I heard, and I learned every single note on that album. Every single guitar part. I mean, I could play in Tony Visconti's tribute band or whatever it is that do that. Holy holy, I could do the guitar because I know it inside out. And it just became my favourite Bowie record, And whenever I hear it to this day, there's such an atmosphere about it. It just takes me right back to my brother and I sitting in my bedroom, just having that on repeat all day long, every day.
Out of all the music in your collection, which artist or band do you have the most albums by?
This is really weird. I would say that when you look at your iTunes or something, you can get a sense of who your favourite artist is. Because, obviously you see how much. Mine, as it turns out, is Nina Simone.
Wow.
Which is really out there. I know it sounds mental, but it is, bizarrely. But I would say David Bowie. I mean, that's an obscure one, but I would say David Bowie without question. Yeah, absolutely.
Last one. Which song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Of somebody else?
Yes.
The track that got me because it's so good, and I was so jealous of it, if that counts. Yeah. And they're great guys, actually. They're friends. I know them really well. And I do love their music as well. But I was so jealous when Johnny Cash did Personal Jesus, Depeche Mode, because I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. And it made me realise how great a song that was, actually. I just thought, God, wish we'd done that.
Well, that's my questions finished, Charlie.
Thanks, Mark. That's brilliant. Good, well, thank you.
I really enjoyed the album, so I wish us all the best with it.
Thanks very much.
Really good. I'm going to stick it on now again, actually.
Good man. So, do you like Vision Thing? The opening track?
Yes. You played that in Belfast as well, didn't you?
Yeah, we did that. We call that one our happy song.
Okay, have a good day. Enjoy lunch. Enjoy lunch with Jim.
I will do. I'll mention I was talking to you.
Right,
happy birthday.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a good day, mate. Take it easy.
See you, Mark. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.